Peoples, top of the morning. It is Thursday, January 18th, and I am here with your geopolitical news. Al Jazeera reports Israeli arrest of Palestinian journalist soared in 2023, CPJ. More than a dozen Palestinian journalists held in Israeli jails since the start of the Gaza war on October 7th. Israel emerged as one of the world's leading jailers of journalists in 2023, according to a report by a press freedom watchdog, with the number of reporters behind bars soaring after the start of the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. In its annual snapshot of jail journalists published on Thursday, the Committee to Protect Journalists found that Israel was the joint sixth biggest jailer of journalists in 2023, alongside Iran. I've said it in previous videos, and I'm going to keep reminding you guys about Israeli war tactics. You see, the airstrikes that just happened in Israel, no one will know the actual death toll. No one will know how many people were actually injured. No one will know anything because the Israeli government has sought to suppress the the press in Israel. So they're not able to communicate in real time what's actually going on. And everything is being, you know, sifted through by the Israeli government before it even makes it to, you know, the international stage where other news media outlets can pick it up. And so they've already curated the information before we even receive it. But it's like, once again, if I allow my intellect to take over, the death toll is far greater than what we are hearing, what we are being fed information of. It is far greater because I can only imagine that the death toll only consists of the people that you were able to find, the people that you were able to see and recover their remains. But for those that are underneath the enormous amounts of rubble and debris, and just from the buildings being being bombed and explosions, there are so many people underneath all of that rubble and debris that the death toll, it cannot be taken into account at this time. It's a rough number. But once they get to bringing in construction crews and things of that nature to start rebuilding Gaza, then we will begin to find out the true magnitude of what Israel has been doing in Gaza. And see, this story right here, I find it to be, you know, I guess I want to say a little bit closer to home, not as it relates to the actual physicality or things that's actually happened, but I mean, as it relates to just in the world of journalism and people trying to, convey information and bring information to the average citizen in any land. It hits close to home because if they can do this to the press there, then I would go as far as to say they would do this to the press anywhere. And so, I've heard stories about American journalists being killed on American soil from some foreign entity because they reported, things in a negative light on such foreign entity. So I've heard such things as that. And so as I sit here and I bring these stories to you guys, once again, I told you the other day that a friend of mine's, asked me to be careful about how I was reporting, the news, as to not seem like I'm choosing sides. And my response to my friend was, there's an issue with that, because as a humanitarian, I cannot I cannot act like I have not chosen a side. It could have been vice versa. The situation could have been the opposite, and I would have still chosen a side. I'm always going to stand on the side of the innocent. Why would I not? And so I can only imagine that being a journalist in this region is a very, very, it's becoming very, very dangerous. Your life, and not only your life, not just your life, but the lives of your families are at risk. And this is horrendous to even think of. And so I've been reporting and covering not only what's been going on between this conflict and inside the Gaza Strip, but I've also been reporting on Israeli war tactics and what I believe they are engaging in to ethnic cleanse all of Palestine. So not only are they killing innocent civilians and bombing infrastructure, important infrastructure that probably cannot be rebuilt, or at least won't be the same as it was before, which is what the United States and New York City experienced with the World Trade Centers. I mean, sure, they've rebuilt down there, and it's I believe what is called is the Freedom Tower now, but it would never be the same. Those of us that know New York City before that tragic event happened, we know it as two buildings, the Twin Towers. That's what we know. And now that has to be erased from our history because it's no longer that. And so this issue right here of killing those who are just reporting the news, you're doing so because now the world gets to see who you really are. And it's infuriating you. It's making you more angry than the actual situation that brought you into this conflict. The fact that the world is seeing what you're actually doing, that's making you more angry than the actual event that brought you into this conflict. So, as I said before, Benjamin Netanyahu has already said that he doesn't see an end in sight to at least 2025. You're in court with South Africa fighting a genocide case. And we all know that the results from that won't be for years to come. So even that seems like it just seems, frivolous in a sense. And then he goes on to say, with enormous audacity, he goes on to say that he won't even respect the outcome. He will not honor the decision. And so if you do the right thing, the Houthi rebels and Hezbollah and Hamas have been questioned as far as their actions in response to Israel. But even with South Africa, who has went another way which is the legal and the most diplomatic way to go. They filed the case on them, and even in that light, in that sense, you still have an individual who says that he won't even honor it. I mean, what type of individual is this? What type of person is this? You know, a lot of people are sitting back and quoting Bible prophecies and religious prophecy as it relates to the time that we are in. And I'm not denouncing any of it, nor am I promoting any of it. But what I will say is this: seems like the actions of Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu, it seems like they're trying to make prophecy reality. In other geopolitical news, I'm on a YouTube platform, Muslim Network TV. That's Muslim Network TV. You can go to the YouTube platform and find this channel and check out some of their videos and some of their content. Right now, I'm going to play a little bit of this video and give you guys a reaction to what's being said.
From our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Zahra Sayed. Our top story tonight: Euromed Human Rights Monitor reports that at least 100,000 Palestinians have been killed, injured, or are missing in the past 100 days of Israeli aggression on Gaza. Of the
So now let's be clear. Like I said, the number, the death toll as it relates to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, that number cannot be looked at as actual fact. As I said to you guys before, if you use your intellect will tell you that there's more civilians, more remains of dead people underneath the rubble and all of the destruction in the Gaza Strip. So the death toll is enormously bigger than what we've actually been receiving as it relates to the information coming from the Gaza Strip.
31,497 Palestinians killed, 92% were civilians, including 12,345 children, 6,471 women, and 295 health personnel. Additionally, 61,079 people have been injured, some critically. Euromed's report includes those who have gone missing after being arrested by the Israeli army and those presumed dead under.
So what you've done effectively is kill more children than you've killed anyone else. There's more children dead than women dead, than men dead, and absolutely more children dead than Hamas individuals. The ratio of Hamas individuals that have been killed or captured versus the ratio of dead civilians, it's it's not even worth saying it's a fraction. It's not even worth saying that.
Debris. Approximately 1.9 million Palestinians, or 85% of Gaza's population, have been displaced. More than 69,000 housing units were destroyed and over 187,000 partially damaged. The report details the targeting of civilian infrastructure, including schools, hospitals, mosques, churches, and press offices. These potentially constitute war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide under international law. Israel's war on Palestine has prompted a genocide case against it at the International Court of Justice, putting pressure on the nation to be held accountable. Euromed is calling for an international investigation and an end to Israel's killing with impunity, demanding justice for the victims and compensation. Israeli attacks have left Gaza in ruins, with acute shortages of essentials affecting nearly 2 million residents.
And that's why I said, you know, Israel will never recognize whatever decision the International Court of Justice comes to. They have already came out and made a statement publicly saying that they will not honor the decision. And the decision won't be made for years to come. So if you won't even honor the decision and the decision won't be made for years to come, it's safe to say that your campaign, your continued campaign, military campaign inside of the Gaza Strip, not only do you not foresee an end in sight, you're still adamant about your ethnic cleansing. You're still adamant about your destruction of the Palestinians.
In a worldwide show of solidarity, hundreds of thousands of people marched across major cities, including London, Dublin, Washington, and Jakarta, calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The demonstrations marked the 100th day of Israel's bombardment of Gaza. Over 31,000 Palestinians have been killed, 92% of whom were civilians, including 12,345 children, 6,471 women, and 295 health personnel. In London, up to 500,000 protesters gathered at Parliament Square to condemn Israel's actions and criticize their own government's support. Dublin witnessed its largest rally for.
So people all around the world are standing up in solidarity to show support for Palestine. And there have been some demonstrations of support for Israel. But I believe those demonstrations and support for Israel is because certain Jewish people feel very threatened. And if you are not on the side of Zionism, if you don't reside on that side, then if you are a Jewish person, you've never had anything to fear. If you knew your history and knew the relationship that Jewish people and Muslims have had for decades, centuries, then you would know that you've never had anything to fear from a true Muslim.
for Palestinian rights in Irish history, with more than 100,000 participants. Demonstrators displayed Palestinian flags and posters demanding an end to the Gaza genocide. In Washington, tens of thousands of people marched, denouncing the Israeli onslaught and their own government's involvement. Many protesters expressed disappointment in President Joe Biden's hand.
So the American people are outraged. Many of us have, you know, renamed him to another name. And I won't say that name because obviously I'm being censored. But I think you and I have an intellect where you know exactly who these individuals are. And sometimes words don't need to be said. You can take the actions of these individuals and very well judge them based off of that.
Handling of the situation. Protesters in various cities left symbolic displays, including baby dolls covered in blood, to send a message against Israel's ongoing violence in Gaza, outside the U.S. Embassy condemning the genocide backed by Israel and Western allies. Large protests also occurred in Kuala Lumpur, Cape Town, and Johannesburg, while South Africa presented its case of Israeli genocide to the International Court of Justice. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the International Court of Justice, or the ICJ, cannot stop Israel, speaking at a news conference on Saturday.
So now, what is the purpose of the ICJ? What is the purpose of the International Court of Justice if you will have an individual who is a leader from a country who will not even honor the decisions made by such a court? What is the point? And so these deals and these treaties and everything that's signed between nations and countries. I mean, to be honest with you, all one nation has to do is just not honor the deal. That's all they have to do is just say, you know what, we're not doing that. Or at least we agreed to doing it at one point, but we don't agree to doing that anymore. So we're not going to do it. And so it's like, where will it stop? Where will, when will the massacre stop? Or who will stop the massacre from continuing?
Netanyahu said, "No one will stop us, not The Hague, not the axis of evil, and no one else." ICJ has heard South Africa's case against Israel and Israel's defense. Meanwhile, Namibia.
So now, and I told you guys before, pay attention to the signs. This is an election year, a very important election year in the United States of America. Pay attention to the signs of what the government that's in a position of power right now, also the president and his cabinet members. Pay attention to the activities and the things that they do, because I'm almost willing to bet that they're going to move away from their support of Israel. Now, I'm not saying that they will denounce Israel as an ally, but what I am saying is that because of the climate that we are in inside the United States of America, because the president, Joe Biden, understands that the voters are very, very upset. They have a serious disdain for him at this moment in time. The only way that you can change course or reverse it is to do something that is seen in the eyes of the American people as being noble. This is the only way. And unless you are prepared to do something like that, there is no victory in sight for you. And so I believe that because of this political nature, I believe that the United States will abandon its aid and its continuous unconditional support for Israel. Now, as I said before, I don't believe that the support for Israel will stop. I don't believe that it will ever stop. But I do believe that to save face to the American people, to the American public, the president that sits in office right now, he will move in a strategic way as to make it appear as he's moved away from unconditional support for Israel.
Condemned former colonial ruler Germany's offer to intervene on Israel's behalf at the ICJ. President Hage Geingob urged Germany to reconsider its untimely decision to intervene as a third party in defense. In 2021, Berlin acknowledged committing genocide in Namibia. President Joe Biden's frustration with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over Gaza is escalating. According to an Axios report, senior U.S. officials are frustrated with Netanyahu's refusal to comply with the administration's requests concerning Israel's war.
Now, as I just said, you guys just heard me say that. This is the this is what we have to either decipher as true, as fact or fiction. Truth or lies, fact or fiction. This is what we have to decipher. Because now you see the Western media is trying to push the narrative that the United States is upset. They're growing impatient. And so that's the narrative that will be spread out right now. But meanwhile, as I said before, behind closed doors, President Joe Biden just bypassed Congress to send more military aid to Israel? Does he know something that we don't know? He probably knows that Congress would not have allowed it.
The report also notes that Biden has not spoken with the Israeli Prime Minister for the past 20 days. The last phone call between the two leaders on December 23rd was described as tense. Biden's requests include releasing withheld Palestinian tax revenues, increasing humanitarian aid to Gaza, and involving the Palestinian Authority in the post-war scenario. Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen has criticized Netanyahu's actions as leading with defiance amid continued Israeli attacks on Gaza that have caused substantial casualties and severe humanitarian crisis.
Now imagine the nerve, and I'm pretty sure, you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu probably felt the same way. Imagine the nerve of the United States to tell me, or to tell him rather, to release funds to the Palestinians when the United States itself freezes funds from foreign countries, especially of adversarial nature, and they freeze funds, very well seek to use those funds against said nation because of whatever discrepancy is had. This should be outright illegal, because in the marketplace of the free world, you should be exempt from being prosecuted or your money being frozen for viewpoints, for your opinion, for the way that you feel. But this is what's happening time and time again. And it's happening with your very own government.
Anadolu News Agency's photojournalist Mustafa Al-Farouf has revealed how he captured crucial evidence of Israel's alleged war crimes in Gaza. South Africa presented Al-Farouf's photographs as evidence against Israel at the international.
So now there you go. And that would be a main reason why the Israeli quote unquote military, soldiers, government would be targeting members of the press, journalists, because these journalists, through their investigative reporting, through their journalism, they're going to uncover things. And these things might very well hold you in an absolute negative light. And why would you want that? It is problematic for you at a time where you have a military campaign ongoing in the Gaza Strip. So to actively have press reporting every little thing that you do, especially the atrocities, well, I can see your frustration.
Court of Justice. Despite Israel's restrictions on journalists entering military zones, Al-Farouf succeeded in documenting Israeli forces' use of phosphorus bombs. He said he was initially denied access to a military zone on the Gaza border, but was eventually allowed to enter and capture crucial images. These photographs played a pivotal role in the ongoing ICJ proceedings, where South Africa has accused Israel of genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. Al-Farouf said he had no idea he was taking a photo of history as clear evidence of Israel's use of phosphorus bombs in Gaza. He was
So now they're using what I believe is called white phosphorus munitions, bombs, missiles. And so I believe that this is against the Genocide Convention. I believe certain weapons have been labeled, have been put on that list of weapons that are not to be used in a military campaign or conflict. And so I can only imagine that nuclear weapons is on that list as well, because these are things of mass destruction. These are things that cause catastrophic destruction. And if you are supposed to be targeting a certain enemy, then why would you want to use such things? It makes no sense.
amongst the first journalists to make it to the conflict zones along the Gaza border. He documented it from every angle because it was impossible to return there. Al-Farouf himself became a victim of Israeli forces' brutality on December 15th. He was on duty in East Jerusalem photographing people performing weekly Friday prayers in the streets when Israeli forces severely beat him. They hit him in the face with the barrel of a gun, then knocked him to the ground and kicked him. Several photographs taken by Anadolu news agencies were presented as evidence at the ICJ. A Muslim scholars delegation to enter Gaza via Egypt. Details come after the break. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. The International Union of Muslim Scholars plans to send a delegation to enter Gaza via Egypt in response to Israel's continued military offensive in the region. The Union's Secretary General Ali Mohiuddin al-Qaradaghi said the delegation will use Egypt's Rafah border crossing. He has sought support from Egypt and Sheikh Ahmed al-Tayyib, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar University, to facilitate their journey. Al-Qaradaghi had made the request a month ago, emphasizing the desire to not just reach Rafah, but directly enter Gaza. In an incident that has sparked anger and condemnation, the Texas National Guard reportedly denied access to the U.S. Border Patrol agents to rescue a woman and two young children, both drowned in the river along the U.S.-Mexico border. The Texas Guards were acting under direction of Governor Greg Abbott.
Yeah, so I believe that that's the situation going on with the migrant crisis that's happening inside the United States of America. And so, you know, Texas National Guard denial of aid to drowning migrants. I mean, we can all say that that's just a despicable act. For you not to save those individuals that's obviously in need of help is just despicable. It doesn't matter where they came from. It absolutely does not matter. Once you lay your eyes on a human being that is in distress, it is your duty to help. And there is a period that goes at the end of that sentence.
The Border Patrol agents were alerted by Mexican officials to a group of distressed migrants. Their attempts to seek assistance from the Texas Department of Public Safety and Texas National Guard were unsuccessful. Instead of administering aid, Texas Military Department soldiers refused access and sent a soldier to investigate. White House spokesperson calling Abbott's actions cruel and inhumane. The U.S. Department of Justice recently sought Supreme Court intervention against Texas's control over the border, raising concerns about the consequences of its policies. Somalia's Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre has issued a stern warning to Ethiopia, cautioning against any interference in Somali territories. He emphasized a recent sea access agreement between Ethiopia and Somaliland, which claimed independence from Somalia in 1991, is invalid. Barre warned that if Ethiopia attempts such interventions, it will face severe consequences. The Somali government recalled its ambassador from Ethiopia following the controversial sea access agreement signed on January 1st. Under the deal, Ethiopia gained access to Somaliland's coast.
Now, the continent of Africa has been in a lot of distress lately. There's been a lot of coups going on. There's been a lot of attacks going on. There's been a lot of catastrophic natural disasters happening. So the continent of Africa has been under distress. But under that distress, there is a glimmer of hope, at least in my eyes, because what I see is Africa freeing itself. And that right there gives me hope when I see certain nations, certain countries inside of the continent of Africa freeing themselves from the colonialist regimes that resided there for so many decades.
For commercial and military purposes, including the strategic port of Berbera. Somaliland also anticipated Ethiopia would recognize its independence upon finalizing the agreement. This sparked protests in Somalia, with prominent figures amongst the demonstrators. Ethiopia's loss of Red Sea ports in the early 1990s has hindered its maritime trade capabilities, leading to heightened tensions in the region. Yemen's Houthi rebels have said 6 of their military officers were killed in last Friday's U.S.-British airstrikes. A colonel was amongst the dead. Several officers.
I like to take a moment out, to say salute to the Houthi rebels and salute to those that they have lost. May Allah truly be with them. May Allah bless them.
Officers killed in the airstrikes were buried in the capital Sana'a, the Houthi-run Saba news agency reported. The rebel group on Friday said U.S. and British forces had flown 73 attacks on Yemen. On Sunday, a new U.S. British airstrikes were reported in the western province of Hodeidah. Following the attacks, the Houthis declared all American and British interests had become legitimate targets in response to their direct and declared aggression against Yemen. The Houthis have attacked.
So before, the Houthi rebels were just targeting vessels and ships that had anything to do with anything going or coming from Israel. But because of the attacks made by the British and the United States on Yemen and the Houthi rebels have now decided to add the United States and any British vessels to the list. So now any ships that's even just coming from the United States and going to another area outside of Israel, those ships will be targeted as well. And so now the situation has moved from one point, and it's obvious or should be obvious that there is a clear escalation.
Cargo ships in the Red Sea, owned or operated by Israeli companies, or that transports goods to and from Israel in solidarity with Palestine. The Canadian halal food industry is witnessing significant growth in response to the rising Muslim population. In response to growing demand, there are more halal products on store shelves, including meat, snacks, desserts, and common grocery items containing animal byproducts. Omar Subedar, an imam and
That might actually be a good thing for it to be more halal food items that are available for Canadians. That's an absolutely good thing.
founder of the Halal Monitoring Authority, said that the industry is paying more attention, and as a result, more products are hitting the shelves. The authority ensures proper certification and monitors practices within the halal food industry. Companies like Maple Leaf Foods have seen rising demand for their halal offerings and expect continued growth. Major food companies are increasingly catering to halal consumers, with big box stores becoming popular choices for products.
If you haven't done so already, follow Street Icon on those social media platforms. Street Icon 1 on the X platform, formerly known as Twitter. Street Icon on all social media platforms. Drop a comment in the comment section and let me know how you feel. Did you know about these stories? How specifically do they make you feel? Drop a comment in the comment section and always remember, stay vigilant, stay safe. Peace.